Hi and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths, and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. So, if we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
Physical education plays a critical role in developing well-rounded, physically active, healthy children and young people. Today's guest knows this all too well. A qualified teacher who graduated from the University of Birmingham with experience in various educational settings, who ventured into entrepreneurship to create a sports coaching organisation before becoming the co-founder and director of the PE Hub. A fellow Brummie business-based owner and someone who is extremely passionate about supporting teachers to provide children with the fun, engaging lessons they deserve. We welcome Mim Telfer to the Active Code podcast. Welcome, Mim. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Good, no problem. Thank you for sparing us some of your time. I know you're a very busy person at the moment. Just to kick things off, I'll give a little bit of an overview there, but we always like to start the podcast with our guests telling us a little bit more about their professional journey. So if you could start things off with that would be fantastic.
Yeah, as you said, I graduated from the University of Birmingham and I went straight into teaching in secondary school. So I was qualified as a secondary school PE teacher. I did that for several years before becoming a school sports coordinator back in the days when the sports partnership model was getting off the ground. Not everybody will necessarily know about that if they've sort of come into education a little bit later on. But the idea was to reach and join up sort of the opportunities in primary and secondary and to try and bring some of the skills that exist in secondary school down into the primary setting to help upskill the teachers and improve competition and things like that. Off the back of that, several years sort of into the role and when we kind of started crossing paths was when we started our own sports coaching company, and I started that with a colleague of mine, really because one of the things we were having to do was this outreach into primary school, which allowed for sports coaches or external providers to come in. And what was happening was it wasn't always high quality. So we tried to bring a little bit of our knowledge of coaching and teaching. So we started our own company, ran that for several years. And again, then with my outreach work, with training primary teachers and helping to upskill them, I noticed the need for sort of some high quality planning because in general, the primary teachers are non-specialists, so they need a little bit more support, especially because when they're training themselves, they don't get an awful lot of time on PE. So that's where the PE Hub was born.
Great stuff. So obviously, really interesting to know that we've got somebody on the pod who has almost been there, done it, got the t-shirt, I guess, Mim, and you've experienced loads of different roles, some good practice, some poor practice along the way, and as you highlight there, the real need for primary teachers to get supported whether that be directly through mentoring and training or through the PE Hub. Just want to go into a bit more detail about the PE Hub and what that has been created for.
Yeah, it's been created for primary schools to give them a broad curriculum that they can deliver to their pupils. It's really to try and take the workload off of non-specialist teachers, but also to give them the confidence and the knowledge that they need to help deliver high quality PE, because we know that the teachers know how to teach. That I think the issue comes, unlike maybe other subjects in primary school, the issue comes with PE is that they just do not have the knowledge because of the lack of training that they received in primary school in university, because for some reason PE doesn't seem to have a priority when they're going through teacher training. So we've got teachers who are really keen, but just don't have that knowledge through absolutely no fault of their own. So that was really where we saw the need, and we've tried to fill that gap.
Yeah, and how's that changed, Mim, over the last 20 years, I guess, from you graduating to now? Has that got better? Has it stayed the same, or has it just gone downhill?
I would say the awareness around the lack of training for primary PE teachers has improved. So it was a subject that wasn't really talked about, and I think probably one of the good things about the sports partnership model coming in the early 2000s was that it started to raise that issue and make sort of other people in the system aware of that. There's been a lot of intervention, and I think some really good intervention to try and improve that, but fundamentally nothing has really changed in the actual teacher training itself. In terms of time, it's the time that they need to learn the subject, which I believe is still not happening now. I think there's options for primary teachers to take PE as a specialism, but understandably, because there's not a lot of focus on it, teachers are reluctant to go down that route. So I think we're still left in a situation where teachers at their basic training aren't getting enough training for PE. However, there are some good strategies that are coming in now that are mitigating against that. So there's some good things happening. So improvements are being made for sure.
Mim, we spoke to one of our partner organisations and the company director there, Rob, on a previous podcast, and he said for change to happen, it needs to happen from a body such as Ofsted. If Ofsted put more of a accountability on PE or more of a framework in place for schools to follow, that would then help with that change. Do you think that's the case?
I would totally agree with that. With the introduction of the PE and sports premium, we all thought there would be this accountability to Ofsted. However, those reviews that were meant to be undertaken by Ofsted just aren't happening. And when there's a standard Ofsted, on a school, PE in general, and there obviously will be exceptions to this rule, PE in general is either ignored or a cursory, glance at what's going on. So yes, I think Ofsted is one piece of the puzzle, because rightly or wrongly, schools will align what they're doing to what the outcomes that Ofsted are looking for. And if they're looking for high quality PE, then people will start, schools will start really putting a focus on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously know the importance of high quality PE and the foundations that it gives our children to make sure they have the fundamental skills to lead a physically active lifestyle. And you mentioned the premium is obviously one of the key outcomes for that is around the physical activity side of things. So before we delve into that in a bit more detail, what does physical activity mean to you, Mim?
Physical activity to me is anything that means that you're physically active. So physical activity can happen in school, but it also happens in sports clubs, in the family home, in, you know, everyday life. So to me, there's physical activity is about getting yourself moving, you know, so it really is a broad church for, you know, all sorts of things, to be honest.
Yeah. And so how do you keep moving?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I've been fairly sedentary for probably the last six months. I have been doing bits and pieces to the house, which has taken up my time. But in general, I like all sorts of activity. My thing that I'm really into is CrossFit, but I haven't done that for quite some time because of obviously the gyms have been closed, and then before the gyms even closed, we knew about obviously the virus. So it's been a long time since I've set foot into a CrossFit gym. And my gym that I went to was fantastic in terms of providing, you know, online bits and pieces. But so now at the minute, really, I'm doing home workouts in the morning. So my alarm goes off, get my kit on and go downstairs. And I walk the dog a lot. I bought a bike in the last lockdown, which I just loved, you know, to get out and about with that. And I really like trying new things. So I did some open water swimming, probably at the end of the summer with one of my friends who likes triathlons and things like that. So she took me down there and just had a great time. So yeah, you know, I'm willing to give most things a go.
Great. And also with a house renovation as well, you can kind of class some of that as physical activity, I guess.
Definitely, certainly the lifting things, and I think as well in because of lockdown, your ability to get people in to help you is limited. So yeah, I was definitely doing a lot more than I expected or I bargained for when I moved into this house. That's for sure.
So obviously, you know, you're doing a lot of activity, which is brilliant, and we're recording this in the midst of lockdown 3, if we can call it that. And you know that's had a big knock on it. Effect for lots of people like yourself, you know, CrossFit or going to the gym and stuff. It's great that you've obviously adapted and looked at new ways of keeping active. So when you are active, what are the benefits to you?
It's difficult to say because it's always been part of my life, and I think having a bit of a hiatus in the last 6 months has brought it to my attention, actually, the benefits that I do get from it. I think one of the things for me that's really good about physical activity is it gives me structure to my week. So certainly when I was sort of back, when you could, you know, go to the gym or go for a run, or you were just free, those wonderful days where you're free to do whatever you wanted, there was a structure there for me. And a lot of the things that my week was based around was those. And so, and I quite like that personally. There's a bit of accountability to it. If you know that you're meeting someone at a gym for a particular thing, or you're meeting someone for a game of golf or whatever it might be. I think that it helps build friendships and maintain those friendships as well, you know, and all sorts of different types of relationships. So when you're out, like in a club environment or at a gym, you know, those kind of friendships are different maybe from other friendships that you have. And I know in CrossFit, we compete quite a lot, and I hadn't competed since my hockey days. And that was just, one of the things that I loved about CrossFit was getting back into that sort of competitive team spirit, you know, backing each other up. And, you know, I love that. And I'm hoping that, you know, not that I'm a serious competitor anymore, but just, you know, that they have it for all levels, which is another thing that's great about CrossFit. So I'm hoping, you know, when things return to normal, that I can do that again. And, you know, I think one of the things that's good for me is that one of the things I think about is that your body is meant to be used. And when we don't use it, although we might not actually think about it, I think we can get down, you know, our mood can get low, we could be lethargic or even actually agitated, you know, because all we're doing a lot of the time is just sitting in a chair. So, you know, getting up and about and using your body, lifting things, running, you know, getting out of breath is what our bodies were designed to do. So doing that, you know, a couple of times a week, I think is very important for me anyway.
Yeah. What were your first memories of physical activity?
Oh gosh, my first memories of physical activity, probably messing around with my dad. Like my dad was a marathon runner and reasonable at gymnastics, not something that passed itself down to me. So yeah, he was the one that, you know, messed about with us in the garden, kicked a ball about, taught us to do forward rolls, you know, helped help me ride my first bike, and took us down the swings and things like that. So definitely my earliest memories is doing things with my dad and my older brother. Mum was there, don't get me wrong, but it was dad that really kind of instigated that sort of idea of just being physically active being just a normal part of life, something that you do every day. And they weren't into organised sports, my parents, at all. I was the first person in our family to really do that. So even though they weren't pushing me into hockey or netball or tennis or anything, I think just the fact that they supported that kind of lifestyle, and they'd support everything. It did drive me places, get me the equipment I needed. But, because I'd grown up in that physically active house, I wanted to go on, and that's sort of where I found my passion, really.
So from a young age, physical activity has been a big part of your life then, Mim, and through your career then, from if it's teaching, working in school sport partnerships, sports coaching, and then currently providing high quality resources to help teachers and encourage children with physical activity. How do you go about promoting physical activity to others, especially those young people and children who haven't had those positive experiences with either sport or physical activity previously? How do you get those engaged?
Again, my direct experience of that is obviously through teaching PE, and it can be difficult, especially thinking back to when I was purely in secondary school. Children could be quite disengaged by the time they get to by year 7 and by year 9, and so on. And I think, again, particularly in secondary school, our traditional structure of how we teach is not always engaging for children. So one of the things, certainly in the later years before I stepped away to work on my businesses, I really tried to crack that it was mainly girls that I taught, and that, unfortunately is one of the areas where children do tend to drop off. The girls tend to be a little bit less engaged, and so one of the things that I really tried to do was ensure that I planned what I was doing so that they could achieve success in the shortest, easiest and smallest way possible. And from that success, they get enjoyment, and we get this slow kind of re-engagement into what's going on. That's a lot easier to achieve when the children are younger. I think even if they've had no input from home, you're going to get a bunch of 5-year-olds that turn up and they're excited. They'd just run around in circles. If you said, right, you've got 10 minutes, just run around, they'd just run around. And then slowly, kind of, as children get older, they need more engagement and more input to continue to challenge them. So I think, careful planning and good exposure, but also leading by example, I think is really important. So whatever setting you're in, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're in a community group, is showing your love for what's happening, your enjoyment, the fact that you want to get stuck in, and I'm not saying sort of like teacher versus all the children or anything, but just getting involved and really wanting to be part of it, and I think that's to me what can help get children on board. Harnessing natural enthusiasm, I think, is extremely important, and if we can get that right, not just in schools, in all sorts of settings from a young age, and I know we say it over and over again, if we can harness that sort of excitement and that natural energy and keep it going throughout every stage of a child's life, giving them opportunity, I think that's one of the ways that we will get children coming out as young adults wanting to carry on being physically active, and when they have children themselves, passing that on to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on the parental role as well, which is majorly important and probably gets lost a little bit. And having that role model is so important. So moving on to that, obviously the Active Code is all about our belief in organisations improving their delivery will help more children be more active more often. And obviously for organisations to be better, we need better leadership and better leadership skills developed throughout their organisations and their teams. So I'm just interested to know who's the most inspirational leader that you've worked with, Mim?
I gave this one quite a lot of thought, because obviously I've worked in education, but I've worked, even before I was teaching, had a variety of jobs and non, sort of non-work type leadership. But I think I came back to a lady called Kim Wheeler, who used to be the PE advisor for Birmingham, the Learning and Assessment Service. And she really was the person that took me from being a PE teacher to really understanding the role that, sort of understanding what you're delivering, how important it is, your knowledge and understanding, and getting that across. It really, her influence on me really, impacted that. And that's when I got into working with, training primary teachers, because she really knew her stuff. And that was a thing that stood out to me. She was just a font of knowledge, so much experience. And to be honest, I had gone to the University of Birmingham, and which is one of the top universities, but I never really sort of had this kind of experience until I met Kim, and I just really felt like that she was somebody that was passionate about what she does, very knowledgeable, and wanted you to succeed, and not necessarily follow in her footsteps, but go out there and kind of spread the good word.
It's clearly had an impact, given what you're doing now, and trying to help more teachers with their skills and their knowledge and confidence in the delivery of the subject. How about from a business perspective, Mim? I know obviously what you've mentioned there with Kim is some real key skills and qualities that you can take through into the business. But in the business world, is there anyone that you kind of follow or look up to?
I think I try and, one of the things possibly to my detriment, and I know that you, Paul, are quite keen to get out and about, and you meet other sort of business leaders. And I know that's probably something that personally I need to do a little bit more of. I do try and look at, people out there and see what they're doing. But it's a difficult one to answer. It's funny because I was talking to Luke yesterday, and I was saying about, what you guys have achieved at Aspire, and Sammy, my business partner, we often talk about it, and the real changes that you've made and the journey that you've taken the company on, in terms of trying to meet the needs and develop your business accordingly. I've personally, found that, and we often talked about it. It's something that, you wouldn't know. We'd look at what you guys were doing and be thinking, you always seem to be one step ahead of what everybody else is doing. And personally, I did find that, quite inspirational. And, and I don't think that it's, an accident that we're still in contact, and you're always reaching out and trying to sort of build links in what we're doing, and I know you're doing it with other organisations as well. So I have to say, and the fact that you guys are running this podcast is testament to that, to be honest. So so looking up to what you guys have done has definitely impacted some of the things that that we do. And I know that we've taken on board a lot of some of the ideas that you guys have had. So, certainly in your field, you're definitely leading the way. And that's, is an inspiration to small companies like us.
Thanks, Mim. Well, we need to send Mim the check for that very, very kind comments. Thanks, Mim. I didn't expect that. How about you? So at the moment, obviously, you understand the importance of leadership and what you're trying to achieve as an organisation. You've got very clear goals of what you're trying to achieve as an organisation. But if we were to talk to Sammy about your leadership style, what would you say about you, do you think?
It's always a difficult one, isn't it, to have a look at yourself. I know what I try, the style that I try to go for. Whether that comes across or not is another matter. Personally, my style of leadership, I try to be a supportive leader. And I think that maybe comes again from sort of having a sporting background, because when any leadership role you have in sport, you have to look at the person that you're working with. So back in hockey, when you're captaining or anything like that, you really have to take on board everything that somebody in your team is going through and try and support them on that journey. So I like to think of myself as supportive, and really thinking about somebody as a whole person, so that you can get the most from them. Not that they're just a source, for your business, but that you can get the most from them and they can get the most from the role that they're in.
Yeah. Have you ever asked Sammy about your leadership style? Have you ever asked her for feedback?
I haven't, to be honest. I think, like, when we had a big staff, when we worked with SportMad, and not that I directly asked people what my leadership style was, but I try to be open. So if I would, especially if you're asking a lot from somebody, I think it's important to have that communication. So, I mean, one of the things I would do is, whether they felt the things that I was doing was reasonable, whether I was being supportive, whether I was giving them the opportunities that they wanted. So, from that, I did receive generally feedback that, yes, we're on the right vibe, but no, I've never directly asked somebody, but maybe I'll ask it after this.
Yeah, it's not really something I tend to try and do.
You get some interesting, insightful answers, though, I guess, if you went kind of directly and asked that. Mim, you said there what you want to deliver as a leader, open transparency, having that dialogue with your team. Is there one thing at the moment you're working on as a leader?
Well, I think for me, one of the things that I've been working on really is trying to lead in terms of future planning. So it's something that when we weren't quite so busy was a lot easier to do. And when you're under the cosh a bit, it's one of the first things to go, because you go into, fighting fires mode. And that doesn't mean fighting fires necessarily like there's bad things going on, just that you become, quite reactive. And that's never a good place for even an individual to be, let alone a business. So I've just been starting to work on that when lockdown 3 happened. So again, you hit on a tangent. We're not a big organisation, so it's quite hard to delegate. However, that being said, I know that is one of our weaknesses, and we're looking, to really expand so that we can bring in people who have specialisms, so that we can give that, a role to them, rather than trying to be, sort of everything to everyone. And myself and Sammy, is that we need to start bringing in specialists. Then that can free, me up to really plan more strategically. So that's kind of what I'm looking into for my own personal development at the moment, and is trying to find, a way to do that. When would it have been? Just trying to think where it was. Would have been last, maybe May time? No, 2 Mays. So about 18 months ago, I was on a business development program with Gymshark, and that was fantastic, and some really good stuff started happening there. What it involved was getting, because they were looking to develop digital businesses and tech businesses from the hub in Birmingham. And there was probably about 8 of us on the program, and it was great. Got to look around Gymshark, and really kind of them holding your hand to exactly what I was saying: plan for the future, look at what your business is capable of, and look for hiring people, and so on and so forth. And then about probably 4 months into that program, Gymshark pulled it because they themselves were expanding rapidly as a business. And they felt like they couldn't give the candidates really the attention that they wanted. And the guys that they'd put out to do the outreach mentoring work with us had to go back in-house. So that was a real shame, because, for me personally, that was extremely beneficial and really what I needed at that time. So I think when things settle down again, it will be looking at that. Where can, we as a business, but myself as a leader, get that support to, make those leaps forward that, we'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, Gymshark's obviously another local organisation that just unbelievable journey they've gone on, and like huge success. So learning from people like that, without doubt, is a great opportunity. And I suppose it also shows, if they're I suppose they're just being transparent and honest with that. If they funded or supported a program, a business program that was helping small businesses, but they've held their hands up and said, look, actually, we're too busy. We can't stretch ourselves. We've got to focus on the strategy. I suppose it almost comes back down. It's disappointing, but I guess that, it takes strong leadership, doesn't it, to actually pull the plug on something.
Oh, it certainly does. Yeah. I know a couple of people in the programme were a little bit, well, I mean, obviously I was upset about it, but again, if you're being a leader, you have to adapt to any circumstance that changes it. So the guys at Gymshark decided that they couldn't commit to it, and for us as a business, then I just had to go back to what we were doing before, while taking on board the things that I had learned when I was there, which was really helpful, and the support that we got, and just having your eyes opened into. It is a different industry, even though obviously they're health fitness brand. It's a very different industry than kind of what I'm in, what you guys are in. But there's so much that they had to kind of to give. So it was a real shame, and I don't hold it against them at all. And I think you're totally right. It takes strong leadership to know when you can't meet a commitment, and step aside from that rather than doing something badly or not to the level that you want.
Yeah, and I think I'm a big advocate of learning from other sectors, and I think that's something that our sector needs to do better. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail shortly. But I just want to delve into the understanding of what do you think your views are at the moment with regards to leadership in our sector as a whole?
I think it's a tale of two halves, to be honest. I think there's some really fantastic stuff going on, especially in terms of, people stepping up to the mark when the pandemic hit. It's and as you all know, your industry is some of what you do is direct delivery into school. Ours isn't direct delivery into school, but obviously our what we offer is a school package, so it's fairly dependent on bums being on seats in schools. But you've also got, the wider area, sort of like your individual coaches, people who are into their fitness. So I think one thing our industry has done really well is there's people that have really put their head up there and, stepped up and given a presence for our industry, but also for the children that are at home, for the parents that are at home. So I think that's one thing that I would... I think has been really good. I know that people talk about Joe Wicks quite a lot, and he gets mixed sort of reviews, but I think one thing that he has done is addressed a real need, and he's stepped out of what he traditionally does, which is working with adults, reframed what he does, and then put it there for children. And I know that's had a big impact, and I think he gets a bad rap because he calls it PE, but we can't focus too much on that. He's done a lot to raise awareness of the fact that children still need to be active when they're not in school, and when they can't just go and climb on the playgrounds or do anything that they want. So I think in that sense, it taking leadership and stepping up and bringing visibility to the sector, I think there's been some good stuff going on. I think I don't want to be negative, but I think we could do better from aspects of, obviously we don't want to talk too much about just obviously being in PE in schools and things like that. But I think again, we look a little bit too much to like figureheads, so a company or a brand or whatever, even PE will be doing some good work, and then if they put a famous person fronting it, or a sports coach or an ex-player of some description who's talking about PE, it's like, well, to me that's not leadership. It's great to maybe bring a little to sort of highlight it, but I find it quite frustrating when we talk about PE, and you'll turn on BBC News and they're interviewing like some ex-rugby player or a sprinter or something. It's like, well, they're not the leader in PE. We will need to be talking seriously. We need to be talking seriously about the state of physical education as an example, I know there's obviously other aspects to the area, and for me personally, I find that quite frustrating. And the only people that can intervene with that are those leaders, those people who are up there in PE, and make sure that they're the ones getting in front of the camera and really, making the case for PE, which is drastically needed, because if the case for PE is correct, it will have a huge knock-on effect for physical activity and all of the associated industries.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to what we spoke about with other sectors and learning from other sectors, so you've kind of shared your views there on leadership in our sector at present. What can we learn from other sectors, Mim, to help combat physical inactivity?
Yeah, I gave this a bit of thought, and what I was thinking, what sectors are really, sort of got a voice at the minute that people are listening to. And I think one of the sectors is veganism and plant-based eating. I think for several reasons, this has really taken off in the last 12 months. And I went meat-free probably about just over 3 years ago. And in that short period of time, it was a bit of a struggle when I first went meat-free. Now, there is so many things, opportunities, whether it's books, whether it's meal planning, whether it's following doctors, who advocate for it. So there's people in the, plant-based industry. So as I say, it could be doctors, it can be chefs, it can be like sports people. So all these different elements are getting involved in the sort of plant-based, industry, if you want to call it that. And I think we could learn a lot from that, because there's a lot of people banging the drum, and everybody's got their bit of the, information to give on that. So for example, Game Changers, the movie, looks at the benefits of going plant-based on, athleticism. You've got doctors who are talking about the benefits to your health by going plant-based, whether that's, heart health or, even mental health, digestive health, and so on. Then you've got, the chefs who are, realizing more people want to be plant-based. So they're bringing out wonderful books with easy to make recipes. So there's all these kind of people coming together under the same umbrella to push, not to push, but to promote this plant-based eating that, my personal opinion, it would be great if we could all eat more plants, and it's not about necessarily, demonizing meat or anything like that. It's just there's something that's caught people's attention, and multiple different agencies are getting involved. And, I think that's something that the physical activity industry could really learn from and get hold of, and look at who are those key players that can bring forward our case, can bring forward the things that we want promoted. Not just a figurehead standing up there going, do more sport. It needs to have more substance than that, and needs to come from more angles.
Yeah, so like a collaborative approach, I guess, is a way forward. Yeah. It's really interesting, actually. Really, I'll hold my hand up. I don't know a huge amount about that at all. I don't know if you do, Luke. No, that's a no as well. But really interesting, actually, because sitting here thinking listening to what you were saying, and thinking that you're right with regards to that kind of multi agency approach, if you like. So I'm going to put you on the spot now, Mim. Oh, no. Who could those multi agencies be within that space? So if that was the approach for physical activity, and to promote physical activity and put it out there, make it more prevalent in the press and in the media, just because in essence that's what, unfortunately, looks like that's what it needs. We wouldn't have had this conversation 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But are there any organisations, people that come to mind straight away that you think you could get involved in that agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I hate to say it because this would be the last thing on their mind at the minute, but I think the NHS have a role to play in this, about bringing some weight to the need for people to be physically active. the long-term benefits of the NHS being involved. You know, this I think that, you know, they do it a little bit already, this prescriptive healthcare, but it needs to be really out there, not just sort of, oh, you know, you're behind a doctor's desk. People need to know about the benefits. I think, you know, there's some brilliant doctors out there who walk the line of the kind of media and the, you know, so they do their professional job, but also they're quite in touch with the media. And I think they kind of there with maybe the diet stuff, but the physical activity thing, you know, we could maybe be helped on. So it's not, you know, it's not about necessarily putting a burden on the NHS, but really thinking about if they could weigh in, and not just with throwaway sort of one-off little campaigns. It needs to be sort of a well thought out sort of strategy. I also think community leaders. So physical activity takes place in the community, and what we need to do is again, it's really challenging at the moment because obviously the pandemic, but we need to bring physical activity into all sorts of community areas, to, you know, to really uplift, I don't know, the access that people have to it at really minimal, if no cost or a minimal cost. So, you know, working through, I guess, local authorities and things like that, you know, bringing back into use areas of play and things like that. But one industry I think that does that quite well is, you've got children, haven't you, Paul? Do you have children, Luke? Yeah. So, and the dog, yeah. Well, one of the things that works really well is mother and baby groups. And that works fantastically. And then the children get a little bit old, and not just mother and baby groups, but mother and toddler groups. So the mum or the dad, you know, goes with their child and does all these really fantastic things. And then it just stops. And it's like, oh, we now, you know, they've either got to go and do football, or they've got to go and do netball, or they've got to, you know, whatever, do a swim. But these interactive groups where parents come with their children to take part in an activity for the benefits of the child, but also, as you guys I'm sure know, the parents get a lot of benefit from it as well. If we could bring about those types of groups that involve physical activity in the community at minimal cost, I think that would be a fantastic way forward, you know, with full engagement from parents, families, brothers, sisters, or whatever it is. You know, I think that's one of the areas I think we really could learn from.
Two good examples of when NHS with the kind of weight and seriousness I suppose they could add in, and then like you said, Mim, having those community groups and leaders making more opportunities accessible for everyone. Absolutely. There's two quick-fire questions I want to ask you, Mim, and these are, we like to give our listeners some quick wins that they can go away with after listening. So the first one is, if listeners wanted to enhance their leadership skills and their business, what 3 books, podcasts, or people would you recommend?
Yeah, it was quite frustrating because I think I mentioned before, I've moved into this new house, and a lot of my books are boxed up in the loft yet to be unveiled. I've read a lot of business books in my time, and one of my absolute go-tos, and I've probably read it about 5 times, is a book called The Richest Man Who Ever Lived by Stephen K. Scott. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's not a business book as such, but it's a book for really for the principles of success. So it deals with lots of different things, like about how to resolve conflict, how to avoid conflict. It teaches you practical ways to take steps because it talks a lot about action. So, and I'm a great believer in this, is like, action is the backbone of any successful business. You know, you can talk, dream, plan, whatever, but you've got to actually start doing something. And what is fantastic in this book, it tells you those kind of ways that you can build up those steps to take those actions, and how those small actions kind of snowball towards the big things that you want to happen. And it's based on the principles of King Solomon. So it's from, thousands of years ago, but the principles in there are really true. And it's comes from, and you have to by no means be religious to read this book, based on the book of Proverbs, or that King Solomon, influenced. So in there it's just really some sort of 5 key principles. And I always have it in my drawer. I've read it about 5 times. And if I'm ever got a block, or I'm stuck, or I want to work on something, that's the book that I pull out. I would highly recommend it to anybody. As I say, it's not a religious book at all. It's about, the foundations of building a successful life. And there's lots of gold in there for business owners. A podcast which I do listen to in small doses is a guy called Gary Vee. Have you heard of him? He's an American guy, and again, I really like him because he speaks to the person who sat with a piece of paper wanting to start a business, and he speaks to massive corporations, and again, the kind of principles are ultimately the same. And what I really like about what he talks about is where the opportunities are. Where opportunity is, and what you have to do to make those opportunities happen. And again, he really focuses on action. So it's about taking action towards these things that you want to achieve that can bring it about. Now, obviously, that action needs to be aimed in the right way and have some kind of plan and structure to it. But I really think that he sweeps away a lot of the faff that maybe some other kind of business coaches or books and stuff can talk about, and can seem a little bit overwhelming. So I can't listen to it sort of back to back, but he does have some really good principles in there that I think can be beneficial. And then the final one that I was introduced to recently is a book called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. And listened to it as a audio book to start off with, and then bought the hard copy book. And again, the thing that I really like about it is its practical steps that you can take to bring about change in your business, no matter what type of business that you've got. And it's about really, the idea that if a customer comes to you, you want to be able to solve their problems and answer their queries. And it's about the better that you can do that, the better you're going to really, the better that you can answer somebody's questions, the more relevant what you offer to them will be. Or it might be that, they're not suited to your business, and they then realize that, your customers, not every customer is the right customer. So if you get your messaging right, and that's one of the things that I think he talks about is getting your company and your brand message really, really clear, and what it is that you're offering really, really clear, answering people's, questions, anything that they want to know. If you can get that right, then you really start to win, and you win and your customer wins, which is what business is all about. And again, I like it because it's, a big corporation can use his principles, and somebody that's just starting a startup, or in a small company like ours, or a slightly larger company like yours, there's something in it for everybody. So I've certainly found that beneficial. I'm as I say, I'm on my second read of that now.
Great. Yeah, it's a great book. I'd recommend that as well. It's a good book, especially for your business, Mim, given it's virtual, and the website drives a lot of sales as well. So yeah, definitely a good book. So sorry, Mim, go on.
I was just going to say that, like you say, we're a web-based business. Every business needs to be a web-based business now. So even if what you deliver isn't, based on the internet, you need to have that presence, and it has to be really clear what you do and what you are about. And again, that's something that I would say to everybody in our industry. Your web presence is everything now, absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Okay, so what one thing, we've touched on a few things here, so it's kind of picking that one golden nugget, I guess, but what one thing needs to happen to get more children more active more often?
For me, I think it's about PE becoming a core subject. I think that's the backbone of everything. And again, obviously it's slightly related to the particular area of the industry that I'm in. But I think if we can make PE a core subject, the far-reaching consequences of that will be huge. For the children whilst they're in school, but what their experiences will be when they step out of the classroom, and they're in these community areas or wanting to join a sports club or whatever it is.
Yeah, just get the foundations right.
Yeah, and the thing is, if we make it a core subject, every child has to have it every single week. And also, the going back to what we were saying about teachers not having the right training. If we make it a core subject, then hopefully that'll come into teacher training, and just making it a core part of the curriculum will have such an impact that I think it would just have that ripple effect into everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, what is your advice to help other organisations crack the active code?
I think really drilling down to what your niche is and what you do, and then doing that really, really, really well. So rather than trying to spread yourself too thin, look at what does your organisation do? What are you all about? What is it that you're ultimately trying to achieve? And everything you do focused on that. And I think that's a really helpful thing especially when you're a small company and you want to do this and you want to do that and you want to do the next thing. I think really thinking about, okay, what is our purpose? And then what are the things that we need to do to make that happen? And going back to the sort of what I was talking about with the plant-based eating is that, if we all do that, because obviously in our industry, everyone has their own little niche. And if we all do that really well, then, hopefully together we will crack this active code, and bring about that lifelong physical activity that, you guys and myself and, have benefited from. We want that for everybody.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's very easy. We've been guilty of it, and we still are to some extent at times, but you kind of think you can help that with that problem, and we can solve that problem, and saying yes to a lot of things.
Yes.
Easily done. And like you say, just really kind of hone it in, rein it back in, and really focus on what you're trying to achieve as an organisation, and do it well, and do it really, really well, and be known for that. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Mim. So that finishes off our podcast episode. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been really enjoyable. I've learnt lots. I'm going to look into the plant eating side of things a bit more, and that whole industry.
I'm going to go and buy the Richest Man Who Ever Lived book as well and give that a read. Interesting.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think you'll enjoy it.
People want to follow you, Mim, and learn more about the PE Hub. Where can they get in touch with you? Yeah,
we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. At the PE Hub is our handle for all of those social media platforms. Our website is thepehub.co.uk, and you can contact us, one of our contact forms on there. So yeah, we're around and about.
Great stuff. In the heart of the country as well.
Absolutely, best place to be.
So they say. Brilliant. So thank you very much again, Mim. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Speak soon.
Join us next time for the Active Code podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Twitter @aspire_partners and find out more about us and the network at www.aspireactivepartnerships.co.uk.